Good morning, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today in the next one of our series of Wellbeing webinars. Can't even say it. Webinars. And this one's titled Next Chapter. Just a few introductions first off. In case you don't know me yet, my name's Hayley Ailey. I work for the National Board of the Police Federation of England and Wales as a Wellbeing co-lead. I say co-lead because my colleague here with me today is...
Hi all, Paul Williams. I also work on the National Board alongside Hayley for Wellbeing. You may or may not have seen me before. Just some quick introductions to housekeeping before we start and continue with some absolute wow factor of presentations we've got on the content today. There's probably going to be some questions arising today. The platform we've got doesn't really allow for us to bring people in as and when at the moment. So you'll have seen the QR code at the beginning. If you can scan that or if you can email events@polfed.org, we will try and bring some questions in at the end and try and get as many as we can answered prior to that. Over to you, Hayley.
There is the ability for you to put your hand up and we might be able to see it. But as I said, if you can stick your hand up and you've got the tech ability to do that, then the team will try and work with you to bring you in towards the end. If you do want to put comments in the chat, again, I haven't got my glasses on, I've got to be honest with you, so I won't be able to read them myself, but we will try and feed them in, try and keep them succinct, because if we're trying to read through, trying to get through your comments and what you need to say, again, the briefer you can keep it, the better. So, without further ado, I want to welcome our two guests, and they are special guests today because we're really, really excited with the discussions and the presentation we're going to have today. So on behalf of the Police Leavers Partnership, I'd like to first introduce you to my colleague sat on the left here of me, Dr. Kerry Jones.
Nice to meet you all.
It's lovely to have you here today, Kerry, and I think we're going to see some really good stuff, and I think everyone's going to be enthralled, and I think the questions are just going to flow. So I hope you enjoy it, and yeah, just really enjoy the session because I think it'll be brilliant.
Thank you both for inviting us today. It's going to be really interesting, I think, so thank you.
Absolutely, and of course, looking over to my right, and you may have seen it on the intro, retired.
Yeah, 5 years.
5 years. So I'd just like to introduce Stuart Noble. Stuart, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, as I say, I've been retired nearly 5 years now, which has flown by. I was a Lancs officer, Lancs throughout all my career. And fortunately, before I was leaving, Kerry and I had done some work around leadership resilience and work around that area. And that's why we've moved on to look at how we can support people as they start to leave policing and perhaps take away some of those concerns that people will have, because it is quite an anxious period as you leave policing.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
So just thinking through that, and Kerry will go through all the tools and resources that hopefully we can help support and make available.
Yeah, and just as a starter for 10, I just want to say we've obviously had the insight to this this tool and the product that you're going to see, and it is amazing. I don't think any one of us, if you're in any way involved in the policing world, can underestimate the fact that we build up our careers, we use acronyms, we use police spiel, and we work really hard in the different roles that we do, but we never have that true understanding of what that actually equates to when you take the decision to leave policing and how you can then move on and step onto your next chapter and whatever employment that may bring, and to try and equate those years of good quality service and skills that you've built into a language that everybody else can understand. And that for me is the start for 10 for this. So yeah, welcome everybody. I just want to say we're just going to crack straight on because you know what, you need to talk through it, and me and Paul will shut up and just let you do the bits. But you know I'll come in with questions because I can't keep
please do.
You know I can't keep quiet, so just pre-warn you of that one.
Well, no, it's meant to be interactive, so that's fab. Right, I shall. Yeah, so this presentation then really is about how to support police leavers to exit well. We know that there is a research base out there already, and we've also done our own research and developing our support. And we know that actually retiring out of the service can be a significant source of stress. And actually there are a lot of physical and mental issues that people can experience, and there may be some residual trauma that they haven't actually dealt with. So sometimes when you actually leave policing, those symptoms can manifest like PTSD, etc. And when you've left, you don't actually have that support system around you. But the good news is actually, if you are able to manage that role exit well, then and have time to plan and prepare, then actually it can be seen as a positive opportunity and a new chapter.
And I think, Kerry, if I just come in, and that's something I should have said before we started, there's two elements to this, isn't there? Firstly, whatever is the reason for you leaving, because it might be, like you say, 30 years service, but it might be earlier.
Absolutely.
It might be through any other decision that you've decided to leave policing. But undoubtedly, policing as a vocation, and you'll know this, Stuart, we absolutely buy into the whole family ethos, and that it actually does impact not only you, it impacts your family, it impacts your whole being, realistically. That doesn't sound too cheesy, but it does actually, you kind of buy into that ethos, don't you? And then suddenly that can be whipped away.
Yeah.
And the trauma of that,
absolutely,
just in itself, changing your whole routine in your daily life is traumatic enough, let alone whipping away from a family that you've had established for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, that camaraderie between colleagues, that's really important. It's important in role because, you know, it supports you. And even just moving into different roles and different industries, which aren't so hierarchical, you know, that in itself can be a challenge. And we also know that officers and staff make sacrifices for the role, as you say, because for those of us that have worked in public sector, it is a vocation. So we choose organisations based on our values. So it's around public service. So absolutely, you know, that transition can be really stark. And some of the interviews that we've done, you know, like one of the interviews, I interviewed somebody as they were transitioning out, and quite often there's a lot of leave days that haven't been taken. So so essentially they had left the organisation, but they were still there. And they were getting a lot of anxiety because they thought their inbox was broken because they weren't getting these hundreds and hundreds of emails, and they started to get quite anxious. But because we'd gone through some tools and techniques, they were able to realise actually that was normal and kind of manage some of that anxiety. Stuart, I'll bring you in here to talk about your 6 a.m. start.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a really, well, one of the big issues I think is you become conditioned to think and behave in a certain way, and you certainly, you're on high alert all the time. And Kerry and I often joke, I mean I've finished 4 years now, well, nearly 5. But I still wake up at 5:45 every morning, which was my wake up time to go to work. But I've got no purpose at that time in the morning. So it causes a real rub in the family, because I can assure you there's nobody else up at 5:45 in the morning. But my mindset is I'm on now. So what you start doing, and yes, we've had some feedback from my family that you know, there's not a good day that you can't spoil that, because it's very hard to break those habits. And the family impact is certainly something that you do need to be aware of and manage.
And I think one thing this tool, and we will come on to the tool later on, it actually prepares you for that as well. So in your own time, you can read some of these and actually realise that they may happen to you before you're actually taking that journey and exiting the organisation.
So we have a lot of resources on there that you can work through, some short lessons, etc. So some of this material that we're sharing now, that's actually on there, as well as some of the more practical things like writing your CV and kind of how to prepare interview techniques, writing a LinkedIn profile, because often in policing, people are discouraged from using social media, quite rightly so. So it's completely alien. Some of this is,
and you're nervous. To be honest with you, if I'm coming to exit policing, I would not have a clue how to set up profiles and what the right things to put on there, and not to leave yourself vulnerable. So yeah, absolutely.
Quite often when people are faced with something that they're worried about or anxious about, they will avoid it. So that's almost the worst case scenario, because we get people working right up to the end point, and they talk about just literally falling off a cliff. So, you know, it's because you go from you know, working sort of 100 mile an hour to radio silence to almost nothing. So that's what you don't want. You want to start to prepare. You know, we say sort of 18 months beforehand, but any preparation is better than no preparation. And actually, if you want to do nothing, that's okay too, but plan to do nothing.
Yeah.
So I plan to do nothing for 3 months, or I plan to do all the DIY I haven't done, you know. So because actually to go from having a role where you have to plan, or your role is planned for you, so you know what you're doing that week, that month, you know, etc. Then to go from that to kind of nothing, that's when you can be quite vulnerable. And often if there is some residual trauma that hasn't been dealt with, that's when the intrusive thoughts might start. So start your planning now, and whatever it is. And the other thing to talk about in terms of I want to talk about neuroplasticity, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So if you haven't wrote a CV before, or if you haven't wrote a LinkedIn profile, you won't necessarily have that neural pathway, but it's okay because we can all learn, even as adults. So babies, they absorb everything and they learn really quickly because their brains are growing. But even as adults, we can. So if you think about, we're able to learn another language, for example. So you will feel anxious about something you haven't done, but the more you practice, the easier it becomes, and the stronger those synapses and those neural pathways get. So, you know, most people in your situation will feel anxious and scared, but the more you're able to practice, and this is what our resources do, they give you an opportunity to practice some of that in a kind of
safe environment,
not a scary environment. So then when you do go for that interview, or you are kind of out in the, you know, the real world, you feel more confident. So we can all do it, and we do have that, you know, ability to learn and become proficient at it, because it's a skill. It's a skill. Job searching, interview techniques, writing a good CV. It's all skill acquisition. Well, if you think about your career, you know, however long that might be, 10, 20, 30 years, you will have mastered many, many skills, and many of those skills will be useful in other industries. It's about being able to translate those in a way that's easily understandable. So again, that's something we help with through the tool.
Brilliant.
So I've got some feedback here from some of our interviewees, and they talk about kind of being institutionalized, and so, you know, not even sure where to start, and you know, it's you know, they're worried about their competence, and they're worried about actually what they're going to do. It's like, I don't even know if I can drive a delivery van for Tesco's, you know. But actually, when you start to unpick it, you can see that actually there's loads of skills that you can translate to different roles. It's just about how you describe them.
Oh yes, if I could just come in. Before we started the webinar, Stuart and I were talking, and so many of the things that we don't necessarily assume that we've got skills in. For example, NHS risk management. Now, straight away, Stuart mentioned NHS risk management, and I thought, I haven't got the skills to go and work in the NHS. I know absolutely nothing about clinical care and hospital, but you don't need to. That tier of role is about being able to manage risk. And what do we do in abundance? We manage risk day in, day out. So it's just broadening that thought process, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's one of my big frustrations, actually, outside looking in. I don't think there's a really good understanding of what skill set exists within modern policing, because it's so diverse, it's so broad, it's so deep, and to reassure people, you will have the skills, or you have the skills that lots of potential employers want. I think the challenge is describing them in a way that is understood outside of policing.
And as cops, we do dumb it down, don't we? We work for 30 years or 30 plus years, doing all kinds of high profile work, constant stress on a daily basis, 24/7, 365. And then when we come to a different world, stepping into that civilian world, we dumb ourselves down. We don't think we've achieved so much, but when you open up and we look at what's been produced here and how it can manifest itself into telling us what skills we have, it's absolutely amazing when you look at it.
Yeah.
And there is one thing that policing does, well, there's many things that policing does really well, but the one thing that it does brilliantly is it deals with things because it hasn't got the time not to.
Yeah.
So, you know, whether you're a response officer on the front line or strategic crimes commander, whatever it would be, you are dealing with things and you get it done. And
We are all task and finishers, aren't we?
Absolutely. And that is a really, really valuable skill to take outside.
Absolutely.
So the good news is, so we've done a national police leaver survey where we've got 163 responses. So 85% of respondents said that they were employed, which is fantastic. So there is life after policing, and there, you know, people do go on to do different roles. I suppose when you dig underneath it a little bit more, and when we ask, was it the job role that you're aspiring to take, then 56% said no, and actually 66% said they'd held multiple jobs. So what that might be suggesting is people tend to, they're not quite sure what to do, so they leap into the first job that they come into and then realise that's maybe not quite right for them. So again, the more time you have to prepare, think about what's important to you, think about how this fits around your family, your key values, what you want to take with you to your new role, what you want to leave behind. So that preparatory time is really important. But the good news is, if you start a new role and you know that's not quite for you, there's a myriad of other opportunities out there. So you're not necessarily stuck doing that role. And we also found that most people want to continue, a large proportion want to continue to normal retirement age. So that's great. So even after 30 years service, they still want to continue to work. But actually, sadly, most people, so 76%, didn't get the support when they were leaving. And so there's not really anything out there, which is a shame, because if you look at the armed forces, for example, they have really comprehensive programs out there. So that's really where we started to develop this program. And we based it off the feedback from people that we'd interviewed and surveys like this. This is a timeline that we've put together with the College of Policing, who are supporting this work as part of their leavers work package. And so again, you don't have to follow this route, but we suggest you start looking at it sort of 18 months in and actually thinking about what's important to you, how you're going to manage your wellbeing, because you can start to implement some of those strategies before you leave, like, you know, exercising, etc., right through to kind of the financial planning elements and thinking about a leaving do. You know, these are the things that you want to think about, having the conversations with your loved ones, have you set a date, etc. So that's just a kind of useful timeline for people to think about.
And I think, do you know what? To reframe the whole exit process, I think a lot of us don't put as much time and investment into that. We will challenge the employer that they've got to put some time and effort into it too.
Yeah.
And that's something we absolutely want to push, because you're so right. You know, that's 6 months before you're actually leaving. Should it be that on the date you retire, you've still got a crime basket full of tons of crimes and outstanding actions? How is that helping you leave well if you're still pressurised and stressed? I'm not saying that everybody's got the ability to not have crimes, but there should be almost that relationship with the employer, your line management and the organisation, that should be managing that, because that just causes so much undue stress to the individual, doesn't it? So yeah.
And I think also what sometimes people misunderstand what we talk about with leaving with 18 months, you start planning it for yourself. Absolutely, you should start to give yourself time to plan. But actually what that does, it enables you to focus on the day job.
Yeah.
Because it takes away that distraction.
Yeah.
Because undoubtedly, once you've made a decision that you're going to go, it's something that is in the back of your mind. And as Kerry says, it's dangerous to just forget about it and try it, because that is when you are starting to store up problems. But by taking control and by managing this as it needs to be managed for you, it helps you sort of continue to contribute, because we know we work in an organisation where values and purpose are culturally really important to them. So the more that you can still feel like you're contributing, you get a lot of self-worth from that. And actually, ironically, by helping yourself plan for life after policing, helps you enjoy your time for the remainder of being in policing.
I think that's true.
Well, and also, if you think about the tacit knowledge that leads with policing, that investment, actually, if you're planning to leave, preparing to leave, you can do effective handovers where possible. You know, there is a bit of, you know, succession planning that can go on, etc. So actually, it's better for the organisation that there is more forethought around this. So actually, that you can do those handovers, you can do that mentoring, you can kind of, you know, move on well, exit well, both on a personal front and a professional front. And culturally, that also looks good for those coming into policing. Look how we value our, you know, our officers, our staff, because we help them exit well.
And that's certainly what we're trying to push all forces start to do. College of Policing, Oscar Kilo, trying to push this. Even the Police Covenant are trying to say there is improvements that need to happen, which is why we're almost here today, because it's through work that you've been doing and championing to the College of Policing and to Oscar Kilo. And through that, that's why we're all sitting here today, because we're seeing that there is such a need for this. I think it's all brilliant.
So I'll just talk about how to manage your resilience then, when you're actually leaving and beyond. So this is Professor Dame Sue Black. She wrote the book All That Remains. She's a forensic anthropologist, and she's really interesting. So for those of you that you know, you can read the book, or she does a lot of TED talks. So she's quite an interesting presenter, and she says we must think about the impact that our work has on us, and never underestimate that, because actually it can have quite a significant impact, and we might never be immune from that. So there is the kind of cumulative impact of that kind of traumatic exposure, and we know that officers can be exposed to, you know, over 900 traumatic incidents during their career. So there is a cumulative effect. So we do need to be mindful of that at all times really, but especially when leaving. But I suppose the good news is we do have the ability to be resilient and manage our well-being. And there are kind of three components for resilience. So they're the kind of cognitive, so how we think. So you've probably heard of reframing, etc. So actually seeing the positives, the silver lining, etc., and kind of changing some of those patterns of thinking. And again, if I go back to the kind of neuroplasticity side of things, that if we the more we think negatively, the stronger those neural pathways get. The more we think positively, we're more optimistic, grateful, etc. We strengthen those neural pathways, and we spend less time thinking about the negative. So that's where kind of cognitive reframing comes in. The behavioural elements. So actually, when you're dealing with a stressful situation, you can have kind of positive coping behaviours, or negative or maladaptive coping behaviours, or you can have a bit of both. I mean, we're not all saints. I exercise and also have a glass of wine, but you know, it's about trying to do more of those positive behaviours like exercise, etc. The things that we know make you feel better. You know, help release those endorphins, etc. You know, even seeking social support, for example, and sharing some of your concerns with people. Because again, that's one of the things that we found when we facilitated workshops, is actually just having that ability to share with others in the same position can be really, really helpful. And then the existential component. So you probably all heard of having an existential crisis. So what, you know, because who am I? Who am I now? So it's about thinking about, okay, what's important to me? What is my purpose in the world now that I'm leaving policing? You know, I was an officer for 30 years, but now who am I? You know, is civic duty still important to me? How do I then build that into my role? Or it might even be volunteering opportunities, for example. So Stuart, you're a chair for a charity, aren't you?
Yeah, and there's lots of people, and I think that's almost the perfect position. If you can align the skills that you've learned in policing alongside your own personal values and doing something that you're either passionate about or you really believe in, then there's a lot of self-worth and again that sense of identity that you draw from that.
I mean, I have to say, family members and people that I've ever mentored in trying to seek employment at the start of their careers, I've always encouraged them to do volunteering first and foremost. A, because it looks good on your CV. B, because it brings you that experience of working with other people and meeting all different walks of life, and it just gives you that experience. To be honest, I've never thought about it, but such a substantial career you have in policing, it absolutely means exactly the same things when you're exiting policing too, doesn't it? Realistically, and we never think about that.
We don't, and it's amazing when you speak to people out with policing how interested they are in you and in your career and how it's been, and they want to talk about it, and it's very hard for us because we sometimes don't want to talk about it. We've been damaged, we've been psychologically damaged over a full career of confrontation and trauma. But if we develop those skills and learn how to build resilience and cope with that and manifest that into something good and beneficial, it makes you a very interesting person, a very sought after person. And being involved in things like that not only keeps your mind busy, but creates interest, develops your skills and also develops others. But it also carries a huge advantage into the role you're going into. So it's really interesting. And when we move on to the model we've got to help us do that later on, you can see how it all interlinks, can't you? You get one thing wrong and the whole pathway to your leaving can crumble, can't it? Get it all right, as in planning. Even if you plan to do nothing, then plan to do nothing.
I like that as a sentence.
As long as you have a plan, So it's a very interesting world. Once you dig down and get the scabs of this subject, it's quite interesting, isn't it? There's a lot to.
You use that word planning. I always sort of smile a little bit because you think we come from an organisation that plans everything brilliantly. We're almost able to plan some things, and yet individually, I don't think we've come across anybody that's actually will say, I've had a very clear plan about what I want to do. Most people we come across when they're being really honest, they're actually quite anxious about leaving, and I don't know, I haven't done anything yet.
Or I don't want to think about it. I just don't want to think about it. I know it's in, 6 months. Yeah.
And my experience with my colleagues and my shift colleagues and that they're all retired, they've jumped into the first job because they're grateful that they've got a job. I think that's the scary thing, because we don't know our worth. How many of my friends and colleagues have jumped into the first job that was offered just because they were grateful to get a job? It's never been the one that they've then done 12 months later. Because they've kind of gone, actually, I can, I've got more to offer than this. So then they gain a little bit of confidence and move on to other jobs. But I think that whole exiting, I genuinely think we don't understand our worth.
Even just having those conversations with your friends, your family, your colleagues. We do an exercise around what's your proudest moment. Or your proudest moments, because actually that's when you would be demonstrating your values and your strengths. So it's about unpicking some of that. And actually, when we've done this, you just think, I'm outside of policing, and I just think, wow, like what an impact you've had on people's lives personally, or So it's about having. When we talk about preparing, it can be as simple as having these conversations, saying, what am I good at? What are my strengths? And then because quite often when people give the notice that they're retiring, and then people say, what are you going to do? I don't know what I'm going to do. Whereas if you start to think about these things and what you want to do, you can have a little synopsis. We might call it an elevator pitch, and you can say, well, I really enjoyed doing this and this in my career. My family is important to me, so I want to do part-time and I want to work around them. But actually, I'm really interested in doing this. And even just having that in the back pocket makes people feel less anxious and less fearful.
Well, it's positive, isn't it?
And what it also does is it shares with their networks, because you've also got massive networks that have gone off into industry. So actually, if you're telling your networks what you want to do, they might then say, oh, actually, I know somebody that's looking for a blah, blah, blah. Or did you know so-and-so was recruiting? So again, just sharing that, A, helps you feel a little less anxious because you feel a bit more in control, but also helps you network, you know?
Yeah.
So it's a win-win.
Absolutely.
I've got a really good question here that's popped up on the iPad. How does the Leavers next chapter accommodate those needing to leave on ill health retirement, which is really good question. Because of ill health, this person found it necessary to go down this route with nearly 30 years completed, and that in itself is a trauma, isn't it? When you're
Absolutely.
through ill health, purely probably being broken by the job, you know. It's very difficult then because it's almost a very sudden thing, isn't it? Even though that process can be quite lengthy, you're not necessarily planning to go, are you? But there are ways to cope with that, and I'll hand over to you for that.
Well, yeah, so that's a really good point, and I have so I am doing some research with the University of Wolverhampton to look at this specifically for those that have retired through ill health. So I'm doing an interview study to try and understand what support needs they have. So we are going to develop another work package around this. But I guess the thing is with ill health, it depends what the ill health is. But quite often, like you say, there may be some additional support needs there. So there are improved access to psychological therapies that you can easily self-refer to if you're not getting the psychological support. So I think if you need the psychological support, it's there. But quite often it's also about the confidence. So for these individuals, their confidence might be rock bottom. And you know, they kind of sense of worth and their self-confidence might just need that little bit of extra support, because actually all those things that they did for 30 years, they've still got those skills. They've still got that experience. So I think there's a little bit around building their confidence, but it's the same principle. It's helping them understand what they've done and what they can do now. Because if it's around the role itself and there's those kind of stressors and the trauma they've experienced, well, actually, that's normal to have that response where maybe they can't continue, they've got PTSD, etc. But people can go on to have completely fulfilling careers, doing something completely different that they absolutely love.
And I suppose it's separating the fact that ill health retirement just means that you are not medically suitable to be a frontline police officer.
Absolutely.
It doesn't mean to say you can't go on and do anything else. And I suppose, and I think this will help demonstrate that when we go on to it, that will help you convince the employer as well, or a potential employer, that you still have some incredible skill sets to draw upon. And I suppose it's getting that across, isn't it? But you're right with the confidence. And some people might think if they're being ill health retired through a psychological experience, then you might think they won't be employable anymore. An employer might look down on that. But bearing in mind, we're moving from a realm of policing where incredible trauma on a daily basis to a relatively calm entity, you know. So there's a lot to put across, but there's a lot to put across in a way to convince the employer and yourself that you're still employable and you're still of use to society, I suppose.
And I think, to be honest, and we've discussed this because for the viewers' knowledge, obviously we've had meetings with you both. And we've also put these pointers into the College of Policing and through the Covenant, that it's not just people leaving at 30 years. In fact, to be fair, I think we're moving into a generation that it's not even anywhere close to 30 years that people are leaving policing. It's mid-service, it's early last retirements, whatever the reason. I think this, I have to say, in my own opinion, is a benefit to everybody. I actually think this is a benefit for you if you're remaining in policing, because what it really helps us do, and you'll see when we come on to it, we do it and we'll play with the tool itself so you can see it for yourselves. But what you'll actually see is it helps you realise the value of the skills that you've actually got, because it doesn't matter whether your early life retirement is through a physical disability or psychological. the actual frame of the 90% of the skills that we've got in policing would not be affected by either of those things, you know, and I just think employment world are actually better equipped to ensure protection against disability discrimination than policing, dare I say that. 10 years in this organisation, I think, you know, I think policing's still got a way to go, but I think the outside world are a lot more
but
aimable.
also you're probably moving away from a lot of those triggers.
Yeah.
So actually, you know, you're going to a role where there won't be those triggers. So, you know, as long as you're able to manage those and you're getting the support that you need, there's no reason why you can't go on to have a, you know, a completely different career. And actually, your point around, you know, you might even be able to turn that to your advantage and use some of your experiences, you know, and help others. And that would be kind of post-traumatic growth as well. So actually, you can grow from your trauma. So that's, you know, so I don't think it should be a barrier, and I don't think people should see it as a barrier because really it's not.
Yeah, absolutely. We keep interrupting your slides. I'm really sorry, Kerry.
No, they
feel guilty when I do this.
It's actually helpful to just have the conversation. I think we've talked about some of these. So we've talked about optimism. So these are just split up. It's a matrix. So this is what the research tells. So cognitive, behavioural, and existential elements. So being optimistic about the future, we know that's linked to, you know, well-being and positive mental health, the cognitive flexibility to reframe situations, active coping versus passive coping, actively seeking help, because we also know that, you know, a lot of people, particularly male officers, tend not to seek help. So again, that's a kind of behavioural component, looking after your physical health, maintaining a social support network. Again, this is really important. This is something you can do preparatory. So all of those people that are in your networks now, how are you going to continue to maintain those networks? Because actually they're the people going to help you get further employment, but also just help you with your well-being. So, and how are you going to foster new connections? So that might be through group sports, for example, cycling clubs, whatever that might be. Because again, we know that's really, really good for your kind of you know, your well-being and your mental health, but also the practical bits around getting another job, and just thinking about kind of what's your kind of purpose in the world post policing. So we've talked about this. We've talked about neural pathways and the brain. So I'm not going to go into that. But basically, your neural pathways develop further the more you're grateful for things. So and actually that increases the kind of grey matter. You probably heard of all the London cab taxi drivers left to learn Atlas. So the hippocampus is massive. That's the bit that stores all your memories. At some point I could talk about how it works with PTSD and triggers, but not today. So again, this is all the kind of benefits of being grateful. So even just waking up and you know, listing the 3 things that you're grateful for example, keeping a gratitude journal. A nice one is you can put a little jar and you can put what you're grateful for in the jar and then open it once a week and have a look. Because sometimes we just let the world pass us by, and just being grateful for the small things can really shift our focus and change our whole day or our whole week or our whole perspective. So it's just been about being vigilant really around your kind of, you know, your well-being, your views of the world, minimizing that negative thinking. Active coping, so we've talked about that. So actively seeking support, doing the things that we know will help our well-being and resilience, making sure that you've got that safety net around you, particularly when you leave, because that's the point when you're most vulnerable, and kind of fostering those connections. And I just want to talk about the emotions during retirement. So some of you might have heard of the Kubler-Ross grief cycle. So this was developed originally when looking at individuals who had terminal diagnosis. So they had to come to terms with their own death, basically. But actually, it's now been applied lots of different settings, and actually, some of you that have gone through organisational change may have seen this applied into, you know, so any transition. any life transition, any transition within organisations, getting a new job, moving on, that you can apply this grief model to. And you will go through a range of emotions. So initially, we've talked about it, denial. So avoiding the fact that you are retiring. You might feel fearful, you might be angry, you might be shocked. Anger's the next phase. Bargaining. So some people might think, oh, do you know, I might stay on for a little bit longer. I might not deal with it now, or you know, I think I'm going to leave and I'm going to come back into they don't call it civilian roles anymore, but into another role because I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do. So I'll just stay, even though I don't really want to. Depression. So people can feel quite depressed, quite sad about the loss, you know. And then eventually they'll come to a point of acceptance. So this is where you're feeling more optimistic about the new chapter. Now it's not linear, so you can go back and forth through these emotions. So you may feel angry one day, you may feel sad the next day, you know, you might be in denial another day. So it's not linear. But the good news is actually you can come through that to a point of acceptance. And it's also just good to acknowledge that through any transition, we will feel this range of emotions, and that is completely normal. So you will have these kind of waves of emotions, but there is positivity, I suppose, at the end of it.
And I think that's key. And myself and Paul can attest to this with all our members and colleagues that we've assisted through early life retirement, every one of those stages. Because again, the control is not even with them. In a lot of cases, you know, the individual probably didn't want to see their career finalised this way, but because of what's occurred to them or any conditions that they're carrying, the anger, because the organisation is not even, shall I say, supportive in helping them transition through, and the anger of this being the only route that they have, it's not a choice. But that's really key, I think, and I think we could learn a lot from that. Because you know, all the officers that I've supported, you know, the anger, they feel like, well, how am I ever going to get over that stage? Because I feel so angry, and then I'm constantly treated a little bit poorly from the organisation, which is a trigger anyway. It might even just be an email that comes to them, and it sets off that emotion again, sets them back into the anger stage again, because it's been written poorly, or it's not even understood the gravitas of the situation that the individual's going through. And I don't know about you, Paul, but I see that a lot.
It's a very clumsy world, isn't it? Retirement. It's managed very clumsy as well. And when you're managing somebody who's in a really delicate stage of their career, coming to the end of the career, who just want to go the most peaceful possible way, then, like you say, one email, one word, one sentence can trigger. Even coming from a person that has upset them can really trigger them back into a world of despair. So yeah, it can be a very tricky process. The life retirement, it's not good for the member at all. But it's the only way the member can exit as well. So it's putting the member in a no-win situation, isn't it?
So it's good to understand this. I think that it's normal.
It's not. It's completely normal. It's a completely normal human response to any transition or loss, where there's a sense of loss. But what we do know is you know, actually, if you can try and manage whatever's within your control, if you can try and manage as much as you can, so it might be that you take an active stance looking for a new role. You might think, right, okay, well, I have all these networks. Let me manage this. Like even just as simple as putting your contact details, you know, because we know people have rest days to take, or there is a period before people leave. Putting you out of office with your new contact details on. Contact me on this. You know, so just, you know, it's just as simple as doing that. You know, how are you going to maintain these contacts? How are you going to let people know that you're leaving? Because that's within your gift. You know, how are you going to let people know this, what you want to do? That's within your gift. So if you can just take back a little bit of sense of control, that can help people feel less angry, less less despair, and less depressed, because the more you can control and the more you can try and see some of the positives of the situation, the better you'll be at the end. I mean, even when we talk about those that are leaving after 30 years, sometimes people feel like that choice is taken away from them because financially they need to retire at that point. So they would like to carry on. So within policing, when you come towards the end, quite often that control is taken away from you. So to a greater or lesser extent, you will feel some of these emotions at some points during that transition. Okay, so this is just a reflection for people really to think about what do they currently do to manage their well-being and resilience, and what can they do more of, because this is something that everybody can do now.
Would you recommend people as almost a consideration when they've made that decision, and if they are 18 months in, that they actually seek some kind of resilience coaching or counselling, just to be able to talk through stuff?
Yeah.
So that they've dealt with it, almost like you've put it in the bin before you've even left, rather than carried it till after you leave, which I'm sure probably is what you did, Stuart.
Yeah, no, undoubtedly. I mean, I think there's different levels. There are professionals that can help you depending on the state of anxiety or whatever trauma you might be experiencing. But what we've often found is that people never talk about thinking of leaving.
No.
And even amongst your peers.
Fear for if you mention it,
absolutely,
the landscape's going to change. That's what that is all day long, isn't it? In case you haven't really made that decision yourself, but then your peers around you go, oh, well, we can overlook him or her then for the next major job or promotion because they're out the game. So that's the fear, isn't it?
And this is where I think, policing could support people by providing a much more effective structure for them, to allow people to have these conversations more openly. There's lots of work that's been done around, peer support, even just sitting down and having a coffee with somebody to say, have you done your LinkedIn profile, or have you thought about this? And what you find is that a lot of the anxieties that people think, this is just me, why am I feeling like this? They're shared by everybody. So actually being open and starting a discussion is a really powerful and positive thing, isn't it?
Well, and also finding a retiree mentor.
So
look at those that have retired well. Go and have a coffee with them. If you don't feel safe to disclose it to people within your workplace, look at those that have retired. Reach out to them. And this is where LinkedIn is really helpful, because you can connect with people. And see what they're doing, take inspiration. So absolutely. Either seek professional counselling and support. You might get this through the service, depending on what the resources are available, or you can seek, career coaching or coaching. But even just that informal mentorship that you might get from chatting to others that have gone before you, because the nice thing about that, they can say, well, do this, but don't do this. Whatever you do, don't do this.
They fell down those paths.
I made that mistake. So that's really helpful. So the last section then is around values, purpose and identity. So as we've identified in policing, put a sense of purpose and linking things to your values is really important. And if you link things to your values, you're not going to go far wrong. So actually, if something's not working for you, like a new job or a career, have a think about, well, how does this fit with my values? Because if it doesn't chime with your values, then that's going to be a rub. It's going to be a source of tension. And so we know that, we tend to choose roles in our lives that are linked to our values. And clarifying your values is a great way to prioritize your life goals and, what we desire and what we currently truly desire to be. I've put this in here. This is about finding your flow. So again, think about when you're doing something and you're in that kind of immersed sense of flow and you're really enjoying it. That's kind of singing to your strengths. So think back over your career and think, what did I love to do? What made me feel really energized? Because again, that will give you a clue as to what you might want to do going forward as a career. And it might be doing something completely different. but that chimes to, sense of flow, giving you energy and your values. And then again, these are some questions to think about in terms of your personal purpose. So why am I doing what I'm doing? What purpose does it serve? If it doesn't serve a need or a purpose, leave it behind. And what are the benefits? What would I like to keep doing? What would I like to stop doing? What am I passionate about? What really matters to me? What do I want to learn? Because again, we haven't talked about this, but some people might want to go on and do further study, go into higher education. They might want to teach, they might want to train. So again, what do I want to learn? What do I want others to learn from me? And what impact would I like to make? So I've made an impact in policing. In this new chapter, what impact you'd like to make. So again, these are some sort of key reflections. And this is just a tool. It's called life crafting. So it's where people actively think about their present and their future life and think about what do they want for their areas of their life. So it's not just about career, but it's also about your social life, and it's also about your leisure time. Because again, in policing, that completely gets forgotten about.
We don't have to have a lot of it, do we? So the ability to suddenly have some leisure time is like a completely different world, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. So, so planning for that as well. What are the things that you haven't been able to do that you can now do? Fantastic. Plan that in. And people often talk about feeling guilty about doing that because you've been almost, conditioned, not to have that self-care or not to look after yourself, not to do the things you love. Well, now is the time to think about that. But set some concrete goals. That's really important, and tell somebody about it. Because if you tell somebody about it, they'll hold you to account. So if you tell your husband, your wife, your kids are great for keeping you to account. So if you say, I'm going to do this, and then they'll say, I thought you said you were going to do this. Well, Dad, why aren't you doing that? So and think about how are you going to get from A to B. So you want to do X, how are you going to get there? And we know, again, this is another exercise which is used quite often in therapy, but it's thinking about your ideal future. So what, who do you want to be? What does it look like? What will you be doing when? And what are the goals? And make this commitment. So, do that blue sky thinking about yourself. Who am I now? Who do I want to be? What will I be doing? And how will I get there?
Do you know what? I mean, honestly, there's so much I could pick into that and question you for at least another hour. And I'm sure everybody will think the same. We're coming up to a natural break in a few minutes anyway, because we said we'd have a leg stretch at 12 o'clock, 5 minutes, so everyone can go and get a cuppa and a brew. So I think what we'll do is we'll blend that in nicely and come on to you, Stuart, and the practical side of this after that coffee break. Does that make sense? Because I think that would be perfect for us. So if anyone's had any questions, put me in just on that bit. It'd be quite nice to just air those now. Have you got anything?
There's nothing come through on the iPad yet, but just a reminder, you can email them into events@fulford.org and they'll come through. But again, if you think of questions at the end of this session, you can still reach out to us via email or through events, and we can still get.
Excuse bless you. So realistically, I mean, I've been keeping my eye out to see if any hands do go up or any comments or anything. I think it's really interesting, like you say, when someone hears the 18th month plan, I'm sure everyone in policing thinks, are you kidding? I can't plan for the next week. My shifts might be set, but what I'm doing in that week, control at all. So 18 months seems quite impossible. But as you're talking, you're actually saying that plan could actually be almost that integration. It sounds terrible to say integration back into society, but do you know what I mean? Integrating back into the community, perhaps widening your network, joining those football clubs or those chess clubs. It doesn't have to be anything active, whatever it is that you've always enjoyed doing, so that you're kind of broadening your narrative. And your 18-month plan could be as simple as that, couldn't it? It doesn't have to be a huge thing.
I think certainly 18 months out, it needs to be pretty flexible.
Yes, absolutely.
And for me, as I was due to finish my 30 years, because of course you're not obliged to finish at 30 years.
No.
But my kids were doing O levels and A levels. So that was probably, whilst I hadn't thought of it in that way, that was probably the start of me thinking, right, that will be a good time because I'll be at home, I'll be able to support them. As I said earlier, I got the feedback that my support wasn't always as well as I thought it would be. But that's the sort of things that you can start to think about, and then there are the harder planning elements that you can start to introduce. But you being in control is the most important thing.
Yes.
That you've not pushed it to one side, and all of a sudden, because it does fly by, everyone will tell you that final 18, 12 months flies by. But you do not want to be in that position where going in 3 weeks' time. Well,
what am I going to do? Yeah, and I think, do you know what? I mean, when I think about it, the typical countdown calendar, countdown clock, dare I say, it's still a thing in policing, isn't it? Where people have on their computers a countdown clock.
Yeah, I've seen them.
And yes, you might have put your countdown clock on and think, yeah, that's me thinking, yay, I've got this amount of days. But actually, what you're not doing is dealing with the planning and the prep to be able to step forward in the right way.
Yeah.
And
there's little tiny steps you can make, and those steps will help you feel more confident and reduce the anxiety.
Yeah.
So do something, whatever it is, just do something. Because if you know you're going to retire or you're thinking about leaving, then there are little things you can do at home, having those conversations with your family. Because again, and Stuart will talk more about this, those expectations, you might have one expectation, your family might have completely different expectation.
Yeah.
One of the participants I interviewed, his family was saying, well, you can't do nothing. What are you going to do now? I don't know if that was his wife saying, you're going to get under my feet, but, you can't sit at home, because it sounds great sitting at home, watching Homes Under the Hammer in your dressing gown, but it soon gets old.
yeah.
And actually, that's the point where some of those things that you might have packed away and Pandora's box starts to open. So having a plan. The plan can change. That's absolutely fine.
It's your plan, isn't it?
It's your plan. But just having that plan and kind of doing some of those things that will help manage your well-being and resilience during the transition, that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just like the thought that you're taking a bit of control, whatever the situation is. I like the thought that you're taking control rather than others having control over your decision making. And I think that's crucial, isn't it? That really is. Have we had anything come through? I can't see anything. I'm sure everyone's storing up their questions to the end, and you're all.
Just yet.
And I can tell you're all chomping at the bit to actually see it in live action. So Stuart's going to be jumping all over that in a moment. But we're going to have a quick 5-minute leg stretch. So you can go and get a cuppa, because we've been going for an hour and we are the wellbeing team. We can't cause you any distress. We want to make sure we do things right. So we're going to have a quick 5-minute pause. Please come back and join us at 12, where we'll restart and we'll be headlining Stuart. So we can talk through the app, hear a little bit more about your experience and actually show it in action. So go and get yourself a cuppa and we'll see you in 5 minutes. Welcome back, everybody. Hi, that's been enough time for you to go and get a cup or a drink and sort yourselves out. Straight on to the next section. Stuart, do you know what? In case you're suddenly thinking, where's Kerry gone? She's nipped behind the scenes so she can help with all the technical support, because we're going to actually go through the product and be able to actually play with it in real time. So before we do that, Stuart, over to you. I know you've got a few slides to go through. And can tell us a little bit more about not only your experience, but the practical elements of this tool.
Well, I think, so in terms of my experience, it's quite reassuring actually doing this work, because you realise that everybody sort of goes through the same sort of experiences. I finished just as COVID started, so it was a bit of a hard stop. But the one thing that I would say is really important for everyone is that give yourself some form of decompression. Because I think it's only when you stop where you actually start to realise the demands of the role. And policing is a really demanding profession, very challenging, and lots of work to say what you will take with you after policing. But in terms of being institutionalised, that you think and behave like people outside of policing don't. You are surrounded when you're in work with people who think the same, so you don't really notice that difference. But I think once you stop and then you go back into that family environment in particular, You realise that actually, you know, the way you operate, the way you think isn't how the family operate and think, certainly not how your wider friendship group, etc. So you just need to manage that. There's lots of really positive things you can take from those sort of behaviours. But similarly, there are things that you just need to be very aware of. I think reintroducing yourself back into the family is probably for me one of the biggest challenges, because you don't realise you've been away. You've either been working shifts, you've been working long hours. When you're at home, you're not really at home. You're constantly on your phone, etc., etc. And that does take a bit of management. Sense of identity, you know, you touched on that earlier on. I think that's a big part of actually sense of identity isn't about rank and role. No. It's about a sense of belonging, I think. And you start to miss that you know, you belong to an organisation where there's a very strong culture. As I said, people think and behave very similar to you. Then all of a sudden you're away from it. So how do you manage that? How do you start to understand? It's not as dramatic as the newbie, but there is something about understanding, right? Well, how do I want to be now? What is it that I want from life going forward? So all the tools and the structures that Kerry's touched on and is available are really useful. I
mean, it's often, isn't it? And just as you're saying that, the warrant card. Do you know the amount of people that say the symbolic returning of a warrant card that actually, I think others don't understand. Even people in HR teams don't understand by sending you a letter saying, just drop your warrant card off back to the local station. There's nothing to it. It's just a card. But for us, it's such a symbolic thing that attaches us to that title we've had of being a police officer or someone in policing that is conditioned to react even when they're out of the day job and just out in the community in Asda or doing your shopping, that you would supposedly put yourself back on duty if anything was to occur. I think it's huge. I think that's the thing, isn't it? That's that symbolism.
Yeah. And lots of people talk about that. Lots of people talk about actually it was just a case of putting it through the door of HR or putting it in an envelope and leaving it at the front gate.
Yeah.
You know, the day it
feels like nothing to others.
Yeah, having to walk
a huge thing to us.
You have to wear your visitor's badge. And again, they're just little things, but they are really, really symbolic. And linking those 2 points about how you think and behave, I don't think you'll ever stop thinking and behaving like a police officer. So you'll still see things that other people don't see. Chances are you'll probably still react, you probably still will, and get involved in things that others wouldn't get involved in. And we talked before, didn't we, about being conditioned to you see things that members of the public don't see, and it's the norm for you to go forward and to help and to support. And you just need to manage that. You just need to be aware that you might need to. You're not a police officer anymore. And that's not to say that people go stomping in, you know, bravely dealing with incidents, but you will have your mind. As I said, you'll observe things that are very different. So identity, sense of purpose, I think, is linked to that as well. Yes, that's a big thing, that you realise that it's been a big part of what you've done, and how do you find that sense of purpose, which might be, I'm going to redecorate the house. Certainly not mine, but I would love to avoid DIY wherever I can.
I had a list for mine, as long as you're on.
Well, that's the reason I've kept busy to avoid that list. But it is about rediscovering what it is that I want. Because whilst it can be challenging to leave policing, trust me, there's a really big and exciting world out there, and there are lots of things that people can do that once you take control and you start to put a plan together, can actually make this transition a really positive one. As I touched on before, there is definitely something about the outside world understanding what policing's got to offer. You know, they invest millions and millions of pounds in developing the skill set that exists within policing, and yet at the moment it's just left to find its own course. I think there's something that we can do that's very deliberate, that helps support people to leave and puts them in positions where they are actually continue to be valued, continue to demonstrate the skills gaps. And that's part of what we've tried to build really around some of this. So should I start to?
Absolutely.
I mean, in terms of the background to it, this is something we've been.
I've just got to say, fortunately, I have to say, Kerry, bless her, had a coughing fit, so she's tried really discreetly to leave the room so she didn't cough, and then she comes in and walks straight past the camera. I think that's brilliant. It just shows we're all human.
I did bring tea.
She did bring tea for the team, which I like. But anyway, Stuart, sorry about that interruption. Carry on.
It's fine. I mean, I'm just going to touch on really the background around developing this, because this has been something that, as we've worked with officers as they approach retirement, the resettlement programs that we've done, it all started off in Lancashire, but it's grown and grown and grown over the last 5, 6, 7 years now.
Yeah.
It's been really important to work with yourselves, with Supposer, with the PSA, with Unison, because what we wanted to do is to develop a product that actually is wanted and needed by colleagues.
Yeah.
We still very much think of this as being something that's been developed within policing. There's an evidence base behind it. Thankfully we've got academic resources that helps us to support that evidence base. But when we move forward, the Police Leavers Partnership has been formed. It's now at a stage where we're trying to make it as widely available as possible.
Yeah.
So I've put all the tools, all the resources on a digital platform, and there's some really quite sexy AI, which I know is that this is the modern world.
Yeah.
But this is something that's been developed specifically for policing. So it's quite an impressive tool, which we'll touch on in a little while. But it understands policing.
Yes.
And that's been the big investment to date, has been teaching and training it to understand policing. But perhaps if I could just show a quick video that describes the background of the Police Leavers Partnership.
This will be us relying on technical skills again.
Are you a police officer transitioning to civilian life? Adjusting to civilian life brings unique challenges for police leavers. That's where the Police Leavers Partnership comes in. Our mission is to provide support and guidance to every police officer and staff member who has served, ensuring they have the tools, resources, and confidence to transition successfully into civilian life or retirement. We have a dedicated hub of resources, learning materials, blogs, and podcasts created by former police staff and police support personnel, giving you skills and confidence to transition from policing to your next career. Our AI chatbot is here to help, from crafting the perfect CV, preparing for interviews, or giving advice. With insights tailored specifically for police leavers, the chatbot gives you step-by-step guidance and resources at your fingertips. The assistant can help and support you in multiple ways. It can help you in creating a CV or tailoring your current one. It can help you identify transferable skills and translate police jargon into language the civilian world understands. It can create personal statements and cover letters, as well as offer conversational support. So when you're ready to leave policing with pride, visit www.policeleavers.org and gain the confidence to start on your path to a new career.
Wow. Tell you what, Stuart, in a nutshell, that's everything we need it to be, isn't it? I mean, we discussed this previously before. We are the kings and queens of police jargon and of acronyms and abbreviations, and we speak in a language that I don't even think we realise we speak sometimes, and anybody else that's not in the policing world just looks on in horror that they don't understand what we're saying. And how to translate that is key, I think.
Yeah, and I think there's two elements. I think there's one, we were touching this over coffee this morning, weren't we? About helping people understand actually what skills they do have.
Oh, absolutely.
And then the next step is helping them translate that into a language that might be meaningful to employers or otherwise. But Kerry, who is much better at driving IT than I, so the Police Leavers Partnership is a policeleavers.org is where you can access this.
Yeah.
As we said earlier on, this currently being supported as a proof of concept through Oscar Kilo. So until the 31st of March, all these tools and access to the resources completely free, and
Yeah.
we encourage people to use it. There's a survey pre and post, which will help us all understand the reasons why people are leaving, what they're anxious about, and then there'll be some user feedback in terms of trying to make sure that what we've got fits, and it does reflect the needs of people out there. But I don't know whether people can see this live on screen. I think you can. There's
We're heading on now.
a series of modules with learning material, but I think the bit that people might be most excited to see is the AI chatbot, which allows you to describe what you do almost from a daily basis or over your 30 years, and it will start to help you understand what skills you possess. It will help you with developing personal profiles, writing CVs, writing LinkedIn profiles, all the things that we know people are really anxious about.
Yes.
So I think in terms of the employability element of this, this is a really useful tool to support people. But maybe if we could just start off by, I don't know, if I was to say, officer of 28 years, combination of response and neighbourhood policing, what skills have I developed?
Yeah.
And like any good AI, the more you use it, the more it recognises you as an individual.
Yes, and I think what it does as well, and the developers behind this have been brilliant, because you don't have to fear if you do put an acronym in there.
Yeah.
You know, a CPS or a local neighbourhoods, the roles are all pretty much in there, aren't they?
Yeah.
I don't think any force, because forces come up with their own acronyms as well. So just to make it even more complex, it's not just standard acronyms across all police forces. Some forces come up with different names for response or reactive or don't they? But your developer has actually inputted all of those, and I think it's really beneficial.
And the development, apparently, I've been told, is really important because it's been protected in terms of it's been done internally, so it doesn't misunderstand other acronyms. It understands policing.
Yes.
That it searches against those policing skills against the outside world. So you could ask me to read something there, but I haven't got my glasses on, so.
So, for example,
what it describes.
For example, with this, and I'm sure everybody else can read it a lot better than we can. Kerry, what? Just give me the highlights of what it says.
So it says, with 20 years of experience, both response and neighbourhood policing, you've developed a wide range of transferable skills, and they're really valuable in civilian roles. So we've got leadership and team management, leading teams during operations of community initiatives, demonstrating your ability to manage and motivate others effectively, communication skills, ability to communicate clearly and effectively with diverse groups, including the public, colleagues and external agencies, problem solving and decision making. Your role in response policing has required you to be quick thinking and use sound judgment, particularly in high pressure situations, the ability to assess situations and make informed decisions, which is valuable in project management and other operations, conflict resolution, so engaging with the community and resolving disputes, operational planning, adaptability, community engagement and project management. So should we ask it another question?
So do you know, first and foremost, I just want to say, I think everybody listening into this and seeing this will read all of that and first be impressed that they didn't realise that they had all those skills for a start, because what we think we do in a day-to-day role, we don't think equates to all of that there. I think that is in its first instance is something to be to almost take a moment to take in as an individual, to try and explain why you are so, both of you, so adamant that we don't understand the actual breadth of roles we could actually take on, because we're so narrow-minded in what we do that we don't think in the broad strokes of all the different employers out there and the different things that, you know, could work for that.
You can do.
Lisa, it's gone off. So realistically, that's just my screen gone off, hasn't it? It just says I think it's functionality of the screen. So hopefully everybody else is still with us. I think while the screen's gone up, I'm just going to keep talking because I hope you are still with us. We just can't see the screen at the moment. So I think the thing about the AI is you could put in also any role that you want to go to.
Yeah.
And I also can see that it can compare those two roles.
Yeah.
So you've seen that happen before as well,
Yeah.
haven't you?
So I put in here, I'd like to apply for a project management role in, what shall we, in the NHS?
Yeah, because let's go for that one, because like I said, I didn't even consider that I could leave policing and the skills that I've got in policing could work for the NHS. So we might have a few IT skills at the moment, but bear with us, folks. We're going to still keep going with this.
But your point, it's really what we encourage people to do is almost 3 steps. One, start to download what you've done over your career. It will help you to understand that. Then start to craft that into personal statements, CVs, LinkedIn profiles, whatever you want it to do, it will do. And then you can just cut and paste in job specs, and it will not only compare, but it will start to describe what you've described in a way that's most attractive to that role. So like it or not, AI is here. It's used almost exclusively out in recruitment. So it will pick up the keywords and make sure that your skill set is described in a way that hits those keywords, that helps you get through the algorithms.
And get through that paper sift of any kind of process to get you closer to being the person sat before somebody for an interview. And does it help with interview skills and interview techniques?
Yeah, there's a whole package there around interview skills, interview techniques. We've got, we've drawn on the experience of recruiters to help us in building all of that. So whilst the platform offers a lot of work around the personal resilience, as we're talking, but it also takes you to that next level in how you prepare yourself for employment or whatever that might be in that next chapter. I mean, we were touched this morning, we were playing around and just you said, just put down like what does a day in the life of a response officer look like? And I think it reminds you of what you do.
Yes.
And your point, Paul, earlier on about we're very humble. We don't often talk about what we do, and we use language that is comfortable and meaningful to us. We're quite dismissive of what we do. Actually, you're demonstrating some really complex skills almost hour after hour, certainly day after day.
We're back online. I've just asked it the question. So it's written me a personal profile based on the information that we've provided with it. So dedicated and results-driven professional with over 20 years of experience in response and neighbourhood policing, adept at leading teams and managing complex operations in high-pressure environments, recognised for exceptional problem-solving abilities, strategic decision-making. I have successfully implemented community engagement initiatives and operational plans that have enhanced public safety and service delivery. My strong communication skills enable me to collaborate effectively with diverse stakeholders, ensuring alignment and fostering positive relationships. Now seeking to leverage my leadership and project management experience within the NHS, where I can contribute to improving healthcare outcomes and operational efficiency.
Wow.
So that for those of you that are scared of LinkedIn, that's your profile, right?
Yes.
And again, you can adapt this. So if you want, let's ask it something, another role. Give me another role.
A role in policing or a role that I want to go to?
A role that you want to go to.
I want to work. Come on, Paul, you think of one.
Let's use yours from the other day when we were playing with it, citizens' advice.
Citizens' advice. Now, we were playing with this the other day with another group of wellbeing leaders, and I used the example of I want to go to Citizens' Advice. You'd be amazed how many people messaged me and said, are you leaving the Police Federation and going to Citizens' Advice? It was quite interesting. So we'll just quickly look at that one, and we'll very quickly show everybody on the screen what comes out with that. And then the only other thing I want to do is very quickly do the life in the day of, because I want to pick up some elements of that to show everybody the detail of what we've got. Then I know we've got lots of questions. So we're running out of time, but I hope you can stay with us beyond our time slot. We certainly can stay on, and I hope a lot of you can come. But I hope you can see why it's been so important for us to go into such detail, because I think I could sit here for hours with you. So I tell you what, the viewers can see on there what's come back from the citizens' advice. Just very quickly, can we type in? So we thought, right, I'm a response officer. What have I done on Tuesday? Okay, so what have I done? So I went to a multi-agency case conference meeting. So if you say, I've done this today, what skills?
What skills have I used?
Yes.
Multi-agency
Case conference. I then wrote a complex case summary for CPS.
Mm-hmm.
I then managed a complex case summary for CPS.
Yeah.
I then managed a road traffic accident or incident, whatever. I then created a witness statement for an ongoing complex crime.
Yeah, and then I don't know if you've got that, Kerry, but what skills have I used today?
Ongoing complex crime.
Yeah. What skills have I used today? And I think, and we won't read them all out, but I think because we played with this earlier, it really impressed me and Paul that if the viewers read what that comes back with, not only is that something that you can then copy and paste to anything that you need, but also, do you know what I found with it? It really opened my eyes, that I think it would open anybody's eyes to say, look at the value and the skills you have in your day job. It blew me away, because that is what I think is well-being there. Because it gave me purpose and it gave me value that when I'm dealing with such horrific, repeated issues day in, day out in policing, and we often say that officers feel like they're just continuing on with such, continuous, ongoing, repeated trauma, stress, longevity in jobs, that they don't feel valued. Even that, reading that gave me value. And I think that was another element to this, as well as what it does to help you with future employers. It shows to you, and I think internally through promotion processes, I think you could utilise this. So you don't really even just need it when you're leaving an organisation. I think it's very good throughout. But I know we've got some questions. Is there anything more you wanted to touch on, Stuart, before we try and come to these questions? And I apologise for going over time.
No, I think that the important thing to remember is it's not an AI tool that takes you ultimately to a set of outcomes that everyone will arrive at. It is very, very good at understanding who you are over time. You build a relationship with it. It describes things that, as you were saying, that you hadn't even necessarily thought of. It's the first time we did that this morning. Just look at what skills you use on a day-to-day basis, because you normalise so much of this, and you become immune to a lot of it. So yes, I think that's a really interesting use and application of it, as you described then. But yes, if you want to jump to questions and maybe see what others are thinking of it.
Yeah, Kerry, you're going to come and join us back again. So what have we got for?
There's questions flooding in, and they're all very relevant. What we can answer today in this session, we will try and tag back to you and get back to you with an answer. But also, if we can, as we progress through this, and we look at how we progress, there's a question here about are we going to be putting on any more of these webinars? And I think even if it's a tutorial of how to navigate and how to go through the app, if we can come
absolutely
do
that.
Yes.
We'd love to help that.
So there's a lot of questions coming in about, is this free to all users or open to what happens up until or after the 31st of March. So obviously the funding for this is free, but it was secured up until the 31st of March, which is a trial. And the feedback is really, really important, by the way. As much feedback as possible as to how this can benefit you and what you actually think of this. But what happens beyond the 31st of March, and that's something we've been discussing between us, isn't it?
I mean, certainly, we want to make this available to every police officer, and I know the staff associations have got clear views about who should fund that. I think that's an issue for yourselves to take forward.
Yeah.
But I can see absolute relevance and value to anyone, not just leaving the force, but just part of the day-to-day job. So it's
Absolutely.
I think it's something that our ambitions to make available to everybody.
Yeah. And what we certainly want to do is support you both in obtaining that data. We want everybody to visit it. We want everybody to complete the pre-survey and the post-survey so that we can utilise that evidence, go back to Oscar Kilo, go back to the college, go back to the covenant and say, this is vital. This is needed. Because that's where we've then got to push that funding needs to be there. So yes, please, if you know anybody that's leaving between now and the 31st of March, make sure you share this with them. Make sure if you're using it yourself, you utilise it to its full extent. And behind the scenes, we're hoping that data and that work can be pushed through back to the college to say, this is so important.
And it might be advisable to log on with your personal email.
Yeah.
To get around the firewalls, but also if you are leaving, you can still continue to access it until the end of March. And when you do complete the survey, you don't have to go back into the survey. So there is a link on the menu button on how to log on. And we do have a little module on there about how to use the AI tool as well and get the most out of it.
Yeah. Brilliant.
But I think your point around, it's important to remember this is very much part of the police covenant work stream through Oscar Kilo. They're the ones that are supported as financially with this proof of concept. We want to make sure it enhances and complements anything that's out there through the staff associations. But the reality is, we know it's at best piecemeal. There is no one structured approach to support people as the lead policing, and that's been what's been at the heart of us developing this, really.
Yeah. What other questions you got, Paul?
Can we bring Carl in? Is it possible to bring Carl in, Lisa?
I think we're coming to you, Carl. Let's hope. Speak up if you can hear us. Oh, has he disappeared? Let's go on to another question then.
Okay. My lack of social media over my career, for obvious reasons, and I'm in that club, has left me lost when trying to understand something like LinkedIn, what is available to help me create and complete my account. And obviously that's up there, but I'll let you just have a quick chat over that, how it helps.
So there's a module that's step-by-step guide on how to create a LinkedIn profile. So if you work through those lessons, you can create your own profile. But as you can see from the chat, you can actually ask it to create you a LinkedIn profile, etc. So it will help you do that as well. So there is resources on there to help you step by step, hold your hand through setting it up. The other thing about LinkedIn is actually you can do it bit by bit. So you could just set up a profile. Then, you might want to, add your CV in and so on and so forth. So don't feel like you have to do it all at once. And you can keep tweaking and improving dependent on what jobs you're getting through, because you have to put keywords in, etc. So, it doesn't have to be perfect straight off the bat. You can just start and then add in incrementally.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Kerry. And I think we've got someone. Is that Carl? I think we've got Carl.
Hi, Carl.
Hi, Carl. Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, well, it's pertinent to the AI, actually. The main question is, a lot of companies are employing complex algorithms to spot CVs that have been written by AI. I know the police are looking at it, and we've recently had one where we've potentially looked at disciplining an officer who wrote a essay for their PD CA. using AI. So my question is, whilst AI is useful and very good, you were suggesting things like copy and pasting into CVs. So the thing is, what have we got? Because there's honesty and integrity issues with that. Because obviously, if it's using language that you wouldn't normally use, etc. So I just think it's a question for yourselves of, before we advocate the AI and to copy and paste. Yes, read it. Yes, look at it. Yes, give yourself ideas, but just be mindful that copying and pasting could actually undermine you, especially when you look at your former profession. And yes, I do work in that department.
So, Carl, you make a very good point. I'm also an academic, so we have this issue with students turning in their work using AI, and you make a really good point, because actually there does need to be that bit of human input. So actually you do need to review your CV and make sure that it is attributable to you. But in the AI, we use it as a closed system. So it doesn't actually go out to the internet to get this information, but we actually feed that information in. But you're absolutely right. Don't copy it rote. You do actually need to have a look, because what it's good for is if you need to match, because again, the AI will screen your CVs for jobs. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to, a bot to kind of kick your CV out, because it's not going to get to a human. It needs to actually get past the screening and the algorithms to make sure that you meet the essential criteria. Now, what the AI is very good at doing is helping you to do that. So matching your skills to the job description. So absolutely, don't copy and paste it rote. You make a good point. You need to review it. Yeah. You need to personalize it. You need to edit it. But as you can see, a lot of people don't know where to start. And what this does do is start that process and help people get off the starting block.
I agree, but obviously from the former chief super, he was saying about copy and paste it into your CV and stuff, and I'm just, advising people that I work in that department and I work in that arena, that there is big things about now screening out AI CVs.
Yeah. And I think I might have, well, I did misrepresent it. What we're saying is that absolutely you should have a CV that reflects your skills and your experience. The refinement of that to allow it to describe you in a way that's most attractive against a particular job spec is really powerful. Yeah. But it absolutely has to describe you, because the important thing is, when you get through a paper sift, you're going to have to sit there and describe yourself and give evidence of yourself. So I think there's almost stages to it, Carl. It's very much understand the skills that you have, start to describe them in a way that perhaps you've not appreciated, and then you can start to compare and contrast that against particular job specs. But it absolutely has to be the skills that you have developed and that you possess.
And the other thing, Carl, is on this, and the way I took it is the way you were meaning, it might be because we were chatting before, what this AI tool can do, as you've seen, is go through the skills that you probably, it's the language of how you explain those skills. Because, we just think going to a scene and managing a scene at a road traffic accident or incident is just simply that. But what you're actually doing underneath that to actually be able to effectively manage that scene is the things that come out in the list form underneath by the AI. What the AI can't do is keep that in the data forever and a day. So you couldn't go back to it 2 weeks later and that AI chat will still be there, because it doesn't hold the data, does it?
No.
So that's what you're trying to say, is once you've actually obtained that information, screenshot that for your own personal use, shall I say, because then you've got to then personalise what you're actually going to write in a CV.
Yeah.
But it's understanding the skills that formulate underneath going to a road traffic incident and managing that scene effectively. And that's where I think we're all guilty of just not remembering the detail.
It's the translation.
It is, isn't it?
It's that ability to translate, and that's really why we've designed the tool. It's how do you translate those skills and experience in a way that's easily understandable by employers in other industries. So that's the bit that's key. So it's not about misrepresentation, but it's about being able to describe what you do in a different way.
Yes, it is. It's language, isn't it?
Should we move on to the next one?
Thanks, Carl. Really appreciate that one.
Carl.
Take care.
Thank you.
I'll be 55 years old in August, and I am 3 weeks into my 30-year service. Congratulations. I did not start planning 18 months in advance, and I'm just taking the first step towards thinking about retirement. How do I identify where to start and what to do first? I think that's a good one for you, isn't it, Kerry?
Yeah, but that's okay. You've still got time, and any planning is better than no planning. Well, where would you start? I suppose it depends what's important to you. I would start having those conversations with your family, and you can decide together what's important. I think that's a good place to start. Stuart?
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. Starting to plan, you said earlier, there's nothing wrong with having a plan to do nothing, but there are things you can still do. There's even acknowledging that you're finishing and starting to maybe use some of the tools that are there, but would be really helpful in giving you a bit of a head start, to be perfectly honest. I think it does accelerate a lot of the things that you might think about. I think the worst thing you can do is not do the things that you could do. And when you reflect back, you wish, why didn't I do that? I did have the chance to do that. So make the most of the time. It is an exciting world after policing. It's about optimizing the skills, and I think at this moment in time, just reflecting back on what you've done over your career is really important, because it'll help you identify what's important to you, what are the values, and what are the skills that I've developed.
And I think there's the practical bits there around thinking about, okay, well, if I have gone for promotion, or if I've put applications in, or if I've got my previous job descriptions, even just starting to map some of that out, making sure that you take those resources with you, because once you're kicked off the system, you kicked off the system. So making sure you've got all that information there ready. So when you do want to craft your CV, you've got it there. And just doing that little bit of reflection around, okay, well, what's important to me then? What do I want to do? What do I want to leave behind? Managing people, quite often people say, I don't want to do that anymore. Great. Okay, so you don't want to go into another role, managing teams, etc. So it's just having that little bit of time to reflect, but also take with you what you need to build a CV, because you'll forget a lot of the roles and responsibilities. If you've got the old job descriptions, or you've got your promotion paperwork, or any feedback that you've had, take that all with you.
And do you know what? And I don't think we've mentioned this, and please correct me if I'm wrong here. You can copy and paste their document. You can
from within the
yeah. So if you've got your own job spec from Warwickshire Police or whoever it is you work for, and you've kept that, you can put that document into that AI chat, can't you?
Yeah, and it will format it into
and it will format
for you. So actually, the more you've got to put in, the better, because it'll just go. I mean, we've just given it questions, but actually, if you've got anything to put in there, pop it in there, and it will format it for you and it'll describe it. So actually, that goes back to Carl's point, because that is your work experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got some very good ones coming through here. One comment is, it has empowered me, made me realise what skills stuff has taught me. We totally underestimate how great being a cop is. I think that's an important one. Question here, would the AI app be able to recognise other skills I possess, for example, military experience? That's an interesting one.
I mean, sorry, because there's lots of transferable skills from the military into policing.
Yes.
So there's lots of similarities there. And whilst it's been predominantly, if not exclusively, built around policing skills, it will understand things out in the outside world. And I think it will understand a lot of the military. It might not understand the exact acronyms. But it'd be interesting to see. I mean, just
play with it.
Give it a
Absolutely.
word.
Yeah, and please feed back to us if you find there's any limitations. Because it's like you've said, you want this to absolutely fit everybody's needs.
Yeah.
So if you do find any things that it can't handle, you want to know, don't you? So that you can look to develop it further.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, absolutely.
Some fantastic positive comments coming in around this. Made me feel far more prepared for the outside world. A big thank you to the work that you're doing. Hope the funding gets approved, continued. We're going to work on that, aren't we? We're going to work on this with the policing covenant. It's far too important for us not to try and push this forward. So that's a promise from us. One question: I'll be 54 years when I leave in 8 months' time. I hope and aspire to seek this out. Are there any top tips from the panel regarding seeking out a good practitioner or organisation to approach for this, as I'm sure there are good ones and not so good ones? So approaching organisations, I suppose, with your profile and your CV.
I see what you mean. Like where to
We're
go.
a positive police employers, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, I suppose public sector always that chimes with policing values. So I think and also voluntary and third sector. They also really value policing skills. And again, there's that kind of giving back public service which tends to chime. Any other top tips?
No, I mean, lots of people go into health. That's, and I know that is absolutely right at the heart of public sector. But we touched on earlier that the skills deficits elsewhere in the public sector, which frustratingly, policing has a lot of those skills.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of those means of trying to harness that skill set and reapply it. But any of the big organisations in your area, policing is valued for, in terms of they recognise the values within policing. It's far more than, you'd be involved in security. And I think this is the challenge, trying to unpick all of that. But I guarantee when you put into that chatbot what you've done over the last 30 years, it will describe things in a way that will help you identify, actually, I'm qualified to do A, B, C, D.
But if you did want to look for public sector jobs, they're all on the government website, including the NHS jobs. So I would go and have a look at, gov jobs and see what's there. And also the Guardian tend to advertise a lot of public sector jobs as well. So I'd have a look to see what's available out there that might fit with your values. And the Guardian tend to do charity type jobs as well.
And I'd shout out for the legal world as well, civil litigation and all the legal world. From personal experience with my husband, he found a job on the back of NARPO, but he's working for a civil litigation firm in supporting witnesses when they have to go to court. That go as broad as that, go wide, because the values are there. The values, it's almost starting with the values. It's reshaping your thinking, isn't it?
Yeah.
Start with the values and the companies that have common values structure as we do, and then take it from there, I think.
Absolutely.
Go on, Paul, quick, get another one in. I know we're running majorly over, but...
I resigned just yesterday and will be leaving the service at the end of May. I have under 3 months to plan and was never told about the 18-month planning. I think that was just a theory that was bought in, so nothing to worry about there.
No.
So 3 months is still a good time to start.
Still ample time.
What is the most important thing I need to do to plan?
Yeah, okay, so I think it is quite a big transition. So some of the stuff we've talked about in terms of managing your well-being and resilience, thinking about what's important to you, but then it's the practical preparation, so getting your CV ready, getting your LinkedIn profile up to speed, and connecting with those networks before you leave, because we do know the evidence tells us it's your second tier friends, so those who are associates that are much more likely to pass on those job opportunities. So you've got 3 months to make sure that you've got a way to keep in contact with those individuals before you leave. So I would definitely do that. and get all the paperwork and start working on your CV now, because you can put it out there, you can put it on LinkedIn, and you can say available from, looking for, available from. So, those are the things I would say to do.
And definitely go on your intranet systems and download all those role profiles of things that you've done, because I think they're key.
Yeah. And also
aren't they?
any training certificates you've had.
Yeah.
Thinking about, what because again, they might be policing specific, to make sure you've got all your certificates, all of those things, because you'll need those for your CVs.
Excellent.
What about this one? I was forced to retire after a high-speed collision with a stolen vehicle left me with lifelong lower limb injuries. That was a bit of a tongue twister, wasn't it? Now I'm having to face the injury on duty process again, so I assume that's the IOD process that follows, which can be incredibly traumatic. Any help or pointers in the right direction to navigate the process is appreciated. Now, the IOD process is in process in itself, which is internal.
It is.
Now, I'm not sure what context the question is around, but is there anything, because I'm looking here that this poor cop has been left with a disability, permanent disability through lower limb, and is there anything to help navigate through into a world of employment outside this with those kind of disabilities? Is that something that any of this can help with, or any of the content on there can assist with?
Yeah, I think so. So to complement the support that they get from the internal processes, what this might be really useful is for them to realise the skills that they have developed and how applicable they might be in certain fields. I mean, the idea of this, as this is continuing to develop and grow, we want to get to a point where it not only is able to describe yourself in a way that's meaningful, but actually starts to sort of not quite job match, but suggest where job opportunities might be for you. And the meeting with you guys, some weeks ago now, about how we ensure that this supports leavers through different pathways, I think is really important. It's been really useful for us. That how do we make sure that the specific support there that can help people who have left through ill health or otherwise.
And if you need any support in regards to going through your process that you're doing now, then still get back in touch with your local federation branch that can be able to help you in that formulation of what you've got to go through, because we can still assist you with that. So it depends on what aspect you're looking at. And again, I'd also call out places like Citizens Advice, because it's about ensuring that you know what you want to do, how many hours you want to do it for, and what's those values. It's got to be about right for you and your health and well-being. And then I think this app then comes in, because once you've formulated that in your head and you know what you want to do and how many hours you want to do it for, where kind of things you want to do it, that's when this app comes in to be able to support you in those in those skills and abilities, I think, to be fair.
Absolutely.
Very quick question here. Can I take up a job outside my force while on a career break? I'm trying to explore better options instead of resigning. Yes, of course you can. It's been done in my force a number of times by officers. All they do is seek permission of the chief constable before doing it. It's just all about transparency and declaration of what they're intending to do. There might be some negotiation that your federation branch can assist with, but generally I find force is quite supportive of those who are seeking different aspects of the career and different ways of moving on. That the forces have generally been very supportive in that. So yes, you absolutely can.
The key is just to tell the force. That's the only thing we'll say. Regulations will say you do have to inform your force if you're looking for other employment. So the key is just let them know. Chances are they may even work with you. And I've seen some officers actually decide after a career break to come back, but not as a police officer, and take on another role. So, work with your forces, but also, absolutely, as Paul says.
I'm taking early retirement due to how I've been treated and currently have a grievance in about that, how I've been managed. if I must continue with the grievance even after retirement, is this going to hold me back from progressing? I'm assuming, and this, we're talking about an internal grievance policy. An internal grievance policy is internal to that force. That doesn't affect your CV, as you will, or anything to do with any progress into another career. Correct me if I'm wrong. Your internal grievance policy, even after you've left or after you've gone, will never affect you having to complete a CV or applying for another job. You don't have to disclose that. That's entirely private between you and the organisation. There is, I mean, obviously this is available post-retirement as well.
Yeah.
Because we want to help all cops who retire, but see them, not just see them through, but help assist them as they're going through, because there's a few questions around that. Obviously, we wonder whether it's going to be free or not. We can't give those guarantees just yet because we're still in negotiations, still trying to find who and how that can be funded. Hoping that can be, but yes, even after you've retired, you can still carry on using this app. For me personally, I've started this. I've started to have a little play with it. I find it absolutely amazing, and it's something that if I decide to keep using, even if the funding isn't there, I'll probably look at self-funding that myself anyway, because it is providing me with an awful lot of input for skill sets outside of the job.
Well, that's a really key question, actually, and I think it's something we should clarify. Ultimately, this is being promoted through Oscar Kilo at the moment and is available to the 31st of March free of charge.
Yeah.
But is it a platform that's available for an individual, or is it something that you work solely with organisations? We don't want to make sure we're giving, you know, false opportunities here.
I mean, I think that the reality is work out we can best support individuals, whether that is around individuals subscribing, whether that is around UK policing funding it, whether that is around individual forces. And that's, you know, as we said, there's a lot of politics involved in this.
But it's all in the mix. So
it's all in the mix. So we're really keen to get it out there. I was a police officer for 30 years. I can see the value of this to me now, having been retired for 5 years. It's really important that this is made available to people. Yeah,
and that's certainly our view. The reason why we've gone, and you'll have seen that we've gone hard to push this as far and as wide as we possibly can. We want that data. You need that data. We need to show that this is of real benefit. And there's a need for this, and that we know there's an absolute need for it. So please use it. Download it on your own devices. Make sure if it's of value to you now because you're in that last 3 months, start using it now. Don't wait. Start using it now while it's there and while it's free. And get as much out of it as you possibly can, in the hope that we can then work with police leaders and we can look for a path of how this is going to continue to be available.
If we need to assist in building a business case, and the feedback is vitally important. So if you're using this, or if you found this beneficial, any feedback you can give us and send in would be absolutely vital in us feeding that back and submitting a business case. So please give us that feedback, positive or negative. Please do it, and we can use that. Thank you very much.
And I just want to thank you both so much, because I found this so interesting and I think it's so informative. I think everybody has been on the call, has had so many questions come through. Just to wrap up, of course, the recorded session will be shared to everybody, and you can share it wider if you need to, if people didn't manage to register through, because we do have a limit of only being able to have 1,000 registrations, and we know we've exceeded that. There's been a lot more interest than people that could get through. So please share it wide. If you've got any questions, you've got our email addresses. You can contact either Paul or myself, or you can get straight through with the details that we shared through to Kerry and Stuart. please, please, please do the surveys. It's a quid pro quo thing here. It's a fantastic tool, but please do the surveys and give us the evidence so that we can push this and make sure it's available consistently and going on for everybody to utilise. We're going to share the slides. They're also going to be shared out. And please share your thoughts on the QR code here in regards to this webinar and whether you thought this is useful, what kind of things you want to see from us. We want to continue on this vein of still doing these wellbeing webinars for important topics that assist you in policing. So please let us know what your thoughts are with them, what you'd like to see improved from them, what you'd like us to do for the future. But any closing remarks from yourself? Stuart, I'll come to you first.
No, other than to say it's not a world to be afraid of. I think you've learned such a lot, you've developed such a strong skill set in policing. It is absolutely of value outside of policing. So wish everyone the well and the best. And thanks again for having us here this morning.
Thank you, Stuart. Kerry, anything you want to say?
Just to echo that, really, it's a new opportunity. This is the time you can do all those things that you thought, I'd really love to do this or be this. The world is your oyster. It's an opportunity. It's a new chapter. So go for it. Be brave. Do what you want and what you'd love to do.
Thank you, Kerry, so much. For me, do you know what? The next chapter isn't written yet. It's up to you to write it. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you all again soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.